Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea from Lightspeed, and today we're going to be walking through our Manager Operations webinar. As we go through the webinar, we will try to get a better understanding of the basic day-to-day operations, mainly for you as a manager or as an owner at the golf course, so that you kind of understand what you're using in the product. If at any point you require any assistance during this webinar, please reach out to our support. Usually you can find that at the bottom right of your screen on that widget when you're logged into Lightspeed Golf or into the retail point of sale. Throughout today's webinar, we're going to be covering all the items in our manager operations. Just to give you an idea of where you are in your onboarding timeline, if you are a new customer, you're at the second training. If you're an existing customer, welcome. This is a good opportunity to see some of our new features that we have and that we've been putting out in the last couple months. So the main areas we're going to be covering today are the T-sheet and online booking settings in particular, customer profile management, employee management, selling memberships and services, as well as our inventory management. To end it off, we're going to cover some key reports so that you can kind of get a better understanding of what you're looking at in the system. So we're going to jump right in. Now, taking a look at the golf side, right now you can see I'm on the tee sheet, but we're going to start off in our settings. Now, the left-hand side is really employee role specific. So because I'm logged in right now as a manager, you're actually going to be able to see all the different modules that the managers have access to. The big one is obviously our settings. This is where we're really going to be able to tailor the system for your specific facility. To get a better understanding of where you can kind of control it, it all starts with your employees. So if we start off over here, you can see I already have some logins created. To add an employee, it's super simple. You can just go into here. You can put in their first name, last name. The email will be required. This is a good opportunity, especially for new users, because if they do forget passwords or need to make any adjustments, we do need an email to be able to send those emails off to them to make sure they can reset their password and gain access to the system. Now, one of the big decisions you're going to make when you're creating a new employee is what role they're going to be defined as. Now, each role will limit their access in the system. We have 4 different versions of the employee role. We have a booking agent, an assistant, manager, and owner. Now, a booking agent is really going to have access to the T-sheet only, going to be able to check out golfers, going to be able to make reservations. So they have very, very limited access. An assistant has a little bit more. They can see the customers and events and T-sheet as well. And we'll show you in just a little bit how you can elevate those assistant permissions a little bit more. A manager will have access to the entire system just on the left-hand side, like you can see here. The only difference between the manager and an owner is the owner is actually going to be able to manage the employees. So a manager couldn't create a new login, but an owner would be. So for our purposes, I'll create a new manager. So we'll go in there and then we can put in their username and their password. Go into here. Now you can see down here we have that POS account ID. You don't have to worry about that too much, but when we are creating a new employee, we do have the ability to link them with their retail so that they have that one login, so that they keep track of that one password, which makes things super easy. We're going to cover that in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. You can see that Tyre was added in to our employee list, so you can see there. What's nice is that you do have that last login date, so you can see if they've logged in yet or if they had any trouble kind of getting into the system. Now, as I mentioned, we do have some different settings that you can actually adjust for the employee permissions. So when I click into an assistant, as the owner, you can actually decide whether or not you want to elevate that assistant role. So it's a good opportunity that if you don't want to necessarily give them the same access as a manager, where they can kind of control pricing, go through the tee times, build all those, you can still make sure that they're able to sell subscriptions, so any kind of membership or service to a customer, whether or not you want them to sell packages. And then lastly, whether or not you want them to manually be able to mark reservations as paid as unpaid. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for all assistants, but if you have a lot of employees as booking agents, but it's just a good option to have. So sometimes a lot of customers will just enable those subscriptions and packages settings so that if someone comes in to buy a membership or a prepaid book, ticket book, anything like that, that that the assistant is still empowered to do that. So as soon as I hit save, this will actually impact every assistant in the system. So it's not that you're making this specific for one employee, you're actually going to impact everybody assigned to that user role. So that's a really good note to kind of keep in mind. If we venture over to the owners, you can see that right away by default those are enabled. So it's a good way to kind of understand the impact of those settings. Now we're going to just skip over these ones. Don't worry. The rest of the products or subscriptions would have been handled in your initial training with your implementation consultant. So we're just going to jump into our different channels. So online booking is really how you're going to dictate the flow for the customer on the online booking widget or through your website. So the default player type, really what it's going to do is that when they open that initial reservation, what category of golfer they're assigned. If they're a member, they will default to their member player type, so you don't have to worry about that. But this is just a good opportunity that if you wanted to separate, let's say, your online versus walk-in rates, this is where you can kind of differentiate your player types. Generally, a lot of people keep it as public. It's a good way, kind of your daily fee rate, your basic visitor rate. And then obviously through your initial training, you would have seen to kind of create some different settings on your player types to dictate how they're booking as well. The high turn times, it's just whether or not if you're a 9-hole facility, right? If you want to see those turn times visible on the tee sheet, if I'm making that turn, you can hide those. The ability to leave an online note, I think, is a really good asset for the staff, mainly because if a customer has the ability to leave a note, staff can either will be able to read it on the tee sheet, but also it just eliminates maybe a phone call to the pro shop. You'd still be able to contact with the golfer if they've left their phone number, or you can email them from the tee sheet, obviously, which we would go over in our tee sheet operations webinar, which you should register for next, of course. So that's just a really good opportunity. It just gives the option to the golfer to be able to leave a note. It doesn't force one on them, but it's just that ability to leave one for the golfers making a booking. The next one is the cancellation policy. So this is where you can determine how many hours in advance that they're able to cancel their bookings. So if you want to make sure that they give 24-hour notice, then you can leave it at the default 24 hours. If you want to give them a little bit more leeway, you can change it to maybe 12 hours, 6. It'll just kind of allow them to cancel their booking that much closer to the reserve time on the tee sheet. So some golf courses have this, but if you did ever wanted to change it, maybe during peak season, make it a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, you do have the ability to adjust that. Now at the bottom here, we do have our restriction settings. So this is where you can just kind of fine tune how they're making their bookings. If we're looking at the single player, that first setting we have at the top there, the restricting the single player, what it's going to do is that when I'm making a booking as a single golfer, it's only going to show me bookings where another group has already booked. So for example, if your 11 a.m. tee time has a twosome already booked, me as a single player, I'll be able to book into there. If there's no other group on that tee time, I won't be able to play. I won't be able to book that specific time. So it kind of restricts the ability for that single player to take up a spot that could otherwise have been booked by a foursome or otherwise. So it's just a good way to kind of control how single players are making a booking on the tee sheet. The member identification required. Now, this one is a good one if you do have a lot of, members playing, or, you have a large member base and you want to make sure that actual members are being booked onto the tee sheet. So what this does is that if I'm making a booking for myself and 3 other members, as soon as I change those player types on the booking during the booking process, the system's going to ask me to put their names in there. If you have this setting turned off, I can change the booking for the 3 other golfers I'm making a booking for, but I won't have to put their names. So I can kind of circumvent maybe those playing privileges. So it just kind of depends how your facility wants to run, but it's a really good way to make sure that members are booking members. Obviously, a public golfer wouldn't be able to book a member type, only members. So this impacts specifically your member base. Honestly, it's a setting that a lot of golf courses have on or off. It's kind of a 50-50 split. It's something that you can also always turn on if you're noticing that, some people are booking for non-members. You can always turn it on to kind of make sure that you're going through there. The important thing to note about this particular setting is that not only does it impact your online booking, it will impact your pro shop bookings. So if an employee is making a booking on the T-sheet, they will be forced to put the members' names as well. So just to keep in mind that the impact that has. The next setting we have is our credit card required. So if you have the Stripe payment gateway, the online payment gateway configured, you can actually force your specific player types to have a credit card on file in order to make a booking. So if I, for example, as a full member, if I go to make a booking, I won't be able to confirm it without putting my credit card on there. Now, a lot of golf courses at the beginning tend to do it for members sometimes because it's a good way to collect their payment information if they're going to be using house accounts or, automatic billing. It's just a good way to collect that payment information. But otherwise, it's a good way for your online booking types for your public players. Maybe you want to make sure that there's a card on file for the booking if they don't show up, or whatever your terms and conditions are of making a booking at the golf course. So this is just a really good setting. Now, obviously, when you're creating your player types, you can do this as you create them. But in this view, it's just a really good way to see exactly which of those player types have it already enabled and if you wanted to add anyone to the list. So it's a good way to kind of manage it. And then the very last setting we have on our online booking is the prevent overlapping bookings. Now, if you have this enabled, it will prevent players from being able to book more than once within that time range. So right now, by default, it's that 5 hours. So if I make a booking at 10 a.m., I'm only going to be able to make a booking after 3 p.m. So I won't be able to book at 10, 11, 12, and then, with my cancellation policy, 24 hours in advance, decide which of those bookings I'm going to keep. So it's a good way if you have a very busy T-sheet and you want to make sure that everybody's getting an opportunity on it. It's a good way to kind of turn it on and see how you want to navigate it. But otherwise, you can always leave it off for the golf course. And like I said, all these settings are completely manageable throughout. As soon as you turn them on or off, it'll have immediate impact. A good opportunity is to actually practice making a booking, even as yourself as a customer, which I'll show you exactly how to add customers into the database manually, is to test these workflows, to understand what it looks like for your members, what it looks like for your public golfers, just to kind of understand the impact these settings tend to have. But those are some really good ones to kind of make sure that your T-sheet is as clean as possible and just really kind of gives you that flexibility on what you want the booking process to be online. So I'll turn that off. Now, if we go to the T-sheet one, pretty simple and similar to our online booking. Same thing as that online booking player type. We can just have that a default booking type when we go to open a booking on the T-sheet. So for example, if you did have an online versus walk-in rate, you could have your walk-in as your default player type on your T-sheet, and you could have online on your online booking. So it just gives you that flexibility of that initial booking type that they get. But again, if it's a member making a booking, it will automatically change to their member type. So they're not impacted by this default one. So a lot of golf courses will just keep that same public player type. Sometimes they'll match, but it's a good way if you have two different rates that you can kind of control where the default that pops up. So it kind of takes that guesswork out of there. The next one is our pace of play. So this is where you can just enable it. It doesn't have an impact on the T-sheet. Really what it's going to do is just have that icon appear on the right-hand side where you can time the play of your foursomes. So if you wanted to keep track, you will have the option to time it for the full 18, but you can also time them at the turn as well. So it gives you the option to kind of really pinpoint how long they've been playing for. And then that last setting we have is that email required. So during an online booking process, the golfers will have an email automatically attached to their reservation. On the T-sheet, you can save a booking without it. So if you enable this, it forces employees to put at least one valid email per reservation. If they're making a group booking for a foursome, let's say, then they'll only have to put one email. Same for a threesome or a twosome. It's just to make sure that there's at least one golfer's information that has been attached to the booking that's valid and everything. So it's a good way to build your member base if you're starting from scratch, as some golf courses do. Otherwise, it's just a really good way to make sure that you're getting as much information onto your T-sheet as possible. So should there be a frost delay or any kind of instance where you want to communicate with the golf course, it's a good way to kind of go through there and make sure that you have a point of contact for the customer. So those are our settings for online and T-Sheet. You can see they're very easy to do. There's no save button. As soon as you do it, it'll take immediate effect so you can test them out. Like I said, I always recommend testing out the settings as you go through it from the golfer's perspective and from the pro shop, going to the T-Sheet, trying to make that test booking and understanding what impact it has on the booking process. So now that we have those, in the same kind of vein, we're going to shift over up here to our packages. So our packages they're like ticket books, right? They're prepaid packages that include either carts or green fees or a combination of both in there, and it allows you to sell that pass. Now you can see I already have some created over here, but let me show you how to create one. So if I go ahead and click create, we're going to have a new window pop up. I can put the name. I could put 10 prepaid rounds. I put it at 300. Now I can choose the tax. So for this one, because it's green fees, I'm going to switch it to my green fee tax. You could put a description if you want to, if there's any restrictions, you could put restrictions. For example, it can only be used before 10 a.m., only Monday to Friday. You can kind of put a little bit of a description so you know what restrictions are involved. We can choose which courses it can be used on. So for example, I have quite a few courses on this account. I'm going to say that it can only be used on the Eastwood one. So now when I'm selling this prepaid rounds for the $300, it's only going to get them access to that one course. If I wanted to make it super clear, I could also add the golf course name, the course name into the package so that we know exactly which one it is. Now, the rules is really where you're going to kind of create and decide. So because it's a prepaid round, I'm going to put 100% on my green fees, and this is strictly going to be for 18 holes. Now, once I create this, I want to make sure that I'm limiting how many times it can be used. So because 10 is in that title, I'm going to say that they can only use 10 total. Now, you do have the option of restricting it on a daily basis or weekly. It's totally up to you. If you want to make sure that they're only using one usage a day, maybe 2 a week, you can determine that. You have the ability to kind of do that. If the customer tries to use it more than your daily or weekly restrictions, there will be an error for them, letting them know that they've exceeded. So it's quick and easy. They know exactly what it looks like. So I'm going to go over to our schedule. Now this is where, like I said, when we were talking about only being able to use it Monday to Friday or before 10 a.m., this is where we're going to accomplish it. So if I click on add, I can pick which days I want this specific rule to apply. So I would say it can be used 6 a.m. until 9 a.m. because 9:59, because like I said, it can only be used before 10 a.m. So as soon as I do this, I have my restrictions set. So now this package, if they come in on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's not going to be eligible for their round. It's only going to be eligible based off those days of the week. And then I can even go a step further and I can say, regardless of how many rounds they've used, I want this to end at the end of the year. So no matter what, if there's 6 usages left, 3 usages left, it will expire at the end of the year, making sure that for next season that they have to renew or they have to buy a new one. Otherwise, if you have this turned off, the package will be available to the golfer for as long as they have usages left. So it's a good way to kind of go through there. And then another layer that you can add on is restricting which categories of golfers are allowed to use this package itself. A good use of restricting the player types is maybe a member guest. Maybe you give out member guest passes with your memberships. So you can create a member guest package and make sure that only maybe a member guest player type can use it, so you can actually track the member guest rounds and restrict how many, like who's using it and how many times they've come in for that specific member. So there's a lot of different ways you can customize this. If this is something that you kind of do with your golf course, I do highly recommend bringing it up during your onboarding process, just to make sure that we have you all set up for your season and every different situation that comes up is taken care of. Now, once I've done that, I can go ahead and click save, and now it's available to sell to our customers. Speaking of, we're going to shift over and we're going to start kind of covering our customer base. So if if I go over to our customers tab, it's going to pull up my entire list. You can see here, I have the emails, the phone numbers. I can search by first name, last name, email, pretty much all the columns. To be honest, you would be able to search for them. If I go ahead and go to my own, you can see here, I'll click there. Now, when you're looking at the customer profile, you can add the address, you can add the member number or bag number, you can add all that information into the database, and you're also able to see these integrations. Now, we're going to come back to this in just a second, so don't worry. Up at the top, we have our reservations. So this is a good way to kind of see the history of the rounds booked, and you can see who they've played with. Over here, you can see any rounds that the golfer has not shown up for. So if you mark them as no-show on the tee sheet, which we're going to cover in our tee sheet operations webinar, our staff webinar. And then we can also see what rounds have been canceled. So you can see here I cancel quite a bit because I play around with my demo account fairly often. So you're able to track how often the golfer actually books. So it cancels. So it's a good way to kind of see what it looks like, when you're on their profile. Now those packages, what we just talked about, you can see here I have our 10 package round left. You can see I had 2 usages. If I click into it, you can actually see the restrictions. So you can see it expired at the end of 2020. So that's where I was talking about. You can have that one. Whereas my annual cart pass didn't have an expiry or any kind of restriction. So it was able to be used until I'm finished with it. So you can see the difference between the 2 types of packages. To sell one, super easy. So if you click on sell up at the top here, we're going to click on add because we're going to find the package we're selling to the member. So I'll go ahead and sell that one we just created, and I'll click assign. So if I click on this arrow right next to the 10, you're able to adjust the price. You can add a discount, but you can also change how many packages they're buying. So if I'm going to buy 2 packages, you can add them from there. And then on top of that, you actually have the ability to set a restriction specifically for this customer. So if you told this customer, hey, this one's gonna end December 15th for you because I gave you a end of season special, but it's only valid for 2 weeks or whatever it is, you can actually set those restrictions right from here, and this will apply to this customer. So it's a good way to kind of go through there. You just have to enable or disable. Now, at the bottom when you're selling, you can have the option of listing a beneficiary. So if I'm making a booking for myself and a guest, and I want to share my package with them because they're on a reservation with me, I have the option of doing that. I can say, I'd like to take one of my usages and give it to the person I'm playing with. If I list that guest as a beneficiary, I'm actually able to share it whether or not I'm on the booking with them. So it's a good use for spouses, families, there's many different ways that we can use beneficiaries so that the owner of the package doesn't have to be there. So for example, I can go through here, I can say, you know what, I'm going to share this package with Aria. I can search and it will pull from my database. So I'm going to choose this one and I'll click add. So from there, you can see now we're part of the list of golfers on this package. So you're not limited. You can add as many customers. A lot of golf courses will use this for corporate packages. There's a lot of different variations that you can do. You can really kind of fine tune it and make it your own. Then from there, I can either hit sale just up here, wherever it's blue, I can click on it, or I can click continue and it'll bring me to the same place. If you gave a discount, you can always leave a note if you want to say end of season promo, 20% off. You can kind of leave it there and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. If I click on credit card, I have the option of charging the credit card directly. Now this again is only an option if you have the Stripe payment gateway, because it's going to store the credit card information for the customer where I can charge them directly. Otherwise, if I click on register, I can go ahead and hit save and it will allow me to finish processing the sale. So from here, you can see my 2 packages. I'll click payment. I'm going to say I paid cash, hit finish sale, close. So super easy. We have our 2 packages on the profile. You can see on the right-hand side that both me and Aria have access to these packages. Just like you could see that I shared this previous package with Dylan. So it's a really good way to kind of see who's the beneficiaries. And if you click whenever you see this register icon, you can always click there, and it's that shortcut to the transaction on the point of sale side. So good way to kind of see what it's linked to, and if you wanted to pull up the historical of it, or the customer wanted a new receipt or whatever it is, it just kind of gives you those shortcuts. So now if we're looking at our subscriptions tab, you can see I use this profile pretty often for our subscriptions. You can see on that status column whether it was an expired or a canceled one. So you can see sometimes I play around with it, but it's a good idea to see kind of the history of your subscriptions. Now, if I click into my expired one, you can see that it expired just at the end of November. If I click on sale, I can see how it was paid. It's a good way to kind of see what the member previously did for their membership payment. Now, it is renewal time, so I'm going to go ahead and click sell. I can see here that I have the schedule. So this schedule is actually the membership itself, when it's valid for. The end date is when the customer will revert back to the default player type, so revert back to public. So you can see here, because my membership expired at the end of the month, that's why I automatically went to public. Now you can change the start date. It can be at the end a couple months from now. If you want to do it at renewal time, maybe you're setting it up for the beginning of the new season, kind of have that flexibility of when this is starting. I'm going to leave the dates as is for this one, and I'm not going to choose to auto renew. Auto renew will keep the same pattern that you initially created and recreate that each year for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'll go ahead and click add on the top right. I'm going to just choose membership. I'm going to go with a full golf membership, so I'll go ahead and click the add. Next, I can go ahead and add a service if I choose to. So if I'm adding a club storage, locker rental, or anything else, I have that ability. I'm going to go ahead and click cancel because this member decided not to add anything else onto their membership. If I click the arrow, very similar to our packages, I can go ahead and change the price, or I can also assign a discount. So let's say I'm giving a 10% early renewal discount for the member. I can go ahead and click there. Otherwise, I can go, now that I'm finished, I can go ahead and click sale or continue, just like we did for packages. Now I can add the note for early renewal, 10% off. Now the send confirmation email, you can turn it on or off for the customer. A good reason to turn it off, maybe someone's buying it for a spouse, maybe another family member, and they don't want them to be alerted beforehand. So it's a good way to just minimize the communication. Otherwise, you can leave it on and it just lets them know that their sale was processed successfully. When we're looking at our payment methods, slightly different than our packages, we now have an on-account option. So on-account is going to allow you to charge membership dues directly onto their house account to either invoice them later, or if you're going to have your statements mailed automatically from the system on the first of the month, it'll be included in there. So if I go ahead and click on credit card, you can see now a new box appears for my payment strategy. This allows you to decide when the start of the billing cycle is, so it's separate from your activation. So I can have my membership start today, but maybe I only want to take a payment a couple weeks from now. Maybe it's at the end of the month. Some golf courses want to kind of keep in mind how they do build their membership. So right now, if you bill your memberships for the upcoming month ahead of time, so let's say for January, the dues are paid at the end of December, you're going to want to change that billing date to the 30th. So it doesn't mean that the membership's not valid right now. It's just when you're actually taking payment for it. Now, your credit card is going to charge the credit card directly. It's not going to get billed later. It's really going to charge right onto their credit card. You will need the Stripe payment gateway in order to do this, so that you have the option to actually charge their credit card. If you don't see this option for you, it's because you don't have the gateway enabled. So what's nice about this is that this is where you can divide the payments into that monthly strategy. So if you only want to bill them once a month for the entire time that they have their valid membership, you can do that. You have the option of really customizing how many payments you want it to be in. So maybe you want, leading up to the spring, you want them to take payments, whatever it is. Kind of customize it with the customer. On account, same concept. It's just not going to be billed directly onto a credit card. It's just going to be added to an invoice. That statement, that member account, those charge accounts, credit accounts, that's what this is going to do. It's just going to it's going to process that sale for you so that it's included in their statement. So that's always a really good flexible option. if you use house accounts. And then lastly, we have our register option. Very similar to our package, this will allow us to take that one lump sum payment. You won't be able to partition it into equal payments. It won't have an impact there, but you will be able to see there. Now, for the purpose of today, I'm going to actually just change the date so you can see what it will look like on the statement. I'll go ahead and click save. And then you'll see that once it's finished, you'll see my active membership as well my player type under the name has changed to a full member. So it's a good way to just have that automated. You can see the view, you can see the history, how long they've been a member. It's a good way to kind of have that holistic view of the customer. Now, if I go ahead and click on payment methods, you're going to see that Visa credit card that popped up when I clicked on the credit card option for both the package and subscription. This is where you can just add a credit card. If you're in the US, you have the option of adding ACH as well. But for now, you can also just put in the credit card. It's super easy. You just put in their numbers. Go ahead and click, go ahead and click add. And it'll add the card. Obviously, because I put the same number in, it just made sure that it was the same one. Otherwise, it would list a second one. You're not limited in having just one card per account. And then we also have our preferences tab. So this preferences tab impacts your filters on your house accounts. So right before we jump into house accounts and kind of gloss over those ones, we're going to look over these preferences. So the house account is if you enable the receive their statements by mail, what it's going to do is that when you're looking at your reports and if you want to download all your statements to prep them for mail, you can filter on just the customers that prefer their statements by mail. So it's just a quick way to filter through them so you don't have to print the whole list of statements. You can just really pick and choose the ones that are going to be receiving it by mail. And then below there, we have our privacy settings. So the privacy settings is specific to a customer. So if they don't want to be visible on a T-sheet or through the search results or member directory, you can pick and choose which, if a member, for example, has that enabled and stuff. So it's a good way to kind of go through and make sure. Next, we have the privacy settings. So these are really good. So if you want to hide, if a member wants to be hidden from the T-sheet or, whatever it is, you can actually just replace, it'll replace their name by guest or member. So they won't appear with their full name on there. So it's a good thing if you have, some customers, some members or some golfers that come through that don't necessarily want the public knowing that they're on the T-sheet itself. This is a really good way to allow them to control that on an individual basis. So once you enable anything on here, don't forget to hit save. Otherwise, it won't take into effect. So it's really important when you hit that save button after any changes you make on this page. Now we're going to navigate to our house account. For this one, I'm going to switch our customers. I'm going to click on this back button over here. I'm just going to click up at the top customers. From here, because we had searched my last name, we can go ahead and search a new one. Now on this profile, if I go ahead to our house account, you can see how long ago it's been since it refreshed, which it will do each night. You can see the credit limit for the customer, the amount that's due. You also have the option of turning on your automatic billing. Now, what's really important is that if you have this enabled, you really want to consider the billing schedule and when the next payment is coming if you were to make a manual payment. So let's say someone has their automatic billing turned on, but they've come into the pro shop, they've come into the restaurant and to make a payment before that date, you really want to kind of consider to make sure that, that you've turned off or on their automatic billing. To turn it on, super easy. Click credit card. If they have no payment method, just like what we did before, we're going to put in, we're going to put in our credit card number. We're going to add it and click confirm. Now, as soon as you enable it, you see what date it's going to be billed next. So because I activated it in December, it's only going to take effect next month. The profile will always show you what the next scheduled date is. So it's just really important to consider, when you're looking at it. If you have a billing date, let's say it was for December 6th, This is independent of anything else. So if it's going to be billed on December 6th, then the customer will be charged on December 6th. So it's really important. You can change this date in your settings if you do have a specific date that you usually charge everyone for, but you will be able to do it there. And again, in order to do this, you will need the Stripe online gateway. Now, if I go down here and go to our payment history, I can go ahead and click make payment. So this is a manual payment on the account. So from here, I can choose how much. You can put in the closing, the current balance, you can clear it, choose what payment method they're using, and click confirm to make a payment. So now, because it isn't going to interfere with my automatic billing, that's fine. You can see right here, payment, meaning I manually did it, and you can see what date it happened on. So it's really quick, easy. You're going to notice that the balance hasn't updated yet. It's just because we haven't refreshed. So if we click refresh, it will clear out that balance really quickly. So pretty simple. It's a good way to kind of go through there and make a payment, and it didn't interfere with automatic billing in any way. So now if I make any charges or anything between now and the end of December, on January 20th, that balance will be paid for. It's really important to note a little bit of what I just said is that you really want to make sure that your closing balance from the previous month is what's included in your automatic billing. Meaning, right now I have January 20th. This will bill everything from this point on because I just cleared my balance. So from December 5th until December 31st, everything included in that statement will be billed on the 20th. My charges from January 1st to the 19th are not included. They will be included in the next month's billing cycle. So you really, really want to just kind of keep that in mind, that your automatic billing is only for your previous month's statements, never your current month. So don't worry, in a recap of this webinar, we will send out some really helpful Help Center articles that details all of this more in depth. If you have any questions about house accounts, super important to ask your implementation consultant so you have a really good understanding of your billing and financials with your members. So don't hesitate to ask and reach out. We will go over that with you. Now, what's a really quick and easy way, we're going to switch gears and we're going to go into our point of sale, into the retail side, to kind of talk about inventory and everything. So if I scroll down on a profile, I can see right here, Lightspeed Retail. Just like I mentioned with package, you see that register icon, you click on it, it is a shortcut. It will automatically bring you to that profile. So you can see right here, I have the membership history, I have the sales history for the customer, I have that. I can go ahead and click on account, and that's that credit limit we saw on the house account. So I can go ahead and say, you know what, this customer can have a $1,500 credit limit, and I can go ahead and update it. The really important thing to note about customers in Lightspeed Retail is that it's very, very important to create customers in golf because they will sync over into the retail side. Creating customers in the point of sale will not bring them backwards. So you really want to make sure that it's a one-directional sync from the golf side into the point of sale. You can see the first name, last name. You see that email came over. It's perfect. Really easy to see, but it's really important that if you're creating a customer, you want it on the golf side too. Keeps your database super clean. Make sure that you don't have any duplicates. Make sure that everything stays nice and tidy. Now that we're in the retail side, we're going to kind of start in our settings like we did just before. So on the left-hand side, just like on the golf product, we're going to see the modules we have access to. I'm going to go ahead and click settings. I'm going to go ahead and scroll to the bottom because we're going to start in our employee roles this time. So we're going to click on employee roles. You see we have our basic 4 that we have created. The lock designates that it can't be deleted. And then you can see I have a custom seasonal employee one. If I click on associate, you can see all the different things you can control what an employee has access to. It's a very, very good idea to actually go through your employee roles, make sure that they have access to what you want them to have access to. Don't give them more access than you need to. You can always add after, or you can elevate a specific individual to a different role at another date. But it's always a good idea to kind of keep everything super tight. Each of the headers is the module you see on the left-hand side. So if you want to give them access to sales, you can give them access to the sales tab, inventory, the customers, settings. You can kind of pick and choose exactly what they can do. For example, that credit limit, if you want them to be able to that probably not all employees, so it's a good way to kind of navigate through there. Same with our inventory. The basics will just allow them to see the list, but not be able to touch the costs, the inventory counts, the returns, purchase orders, none of that. So it's really, really important you go ahead and take a look at your employee role so that you know what you're granting them access to. Now, you can always create a custom one like I did with my seasonal employee. So you can go ahead and click here, and from there you're starting from scratch of what they can access and go through. So now that I have my employee roles, I know what they're there for, I know what I'm giving them access to, I'm going to go ahead and go back to settings, and I'm going to go to our employee setup. Now, you can create this initial one. So if I go ahead and click on Chelsea, you can see very minimal information. If we're looking at our employee list again, you can see down here, I have a duplicated one of myself, but you can see that there's no login, which means I just really I added a name, but I didn't give a password for someone to access this account. So when you're going through it, you can go ahead, details, adds them in, but the sign in tab is where you're actually going to dictate their username and login. If you want to associate a PIN, if you want employees clocking in and out, you will have to set a PIN for them. This will also allow you to force a PIN before each sale. Kind of gives you some flexibility. It's always a good idea to just have employees create them just in case you want to pivot down the line. At least they already have their PINs created. So it's a good way to kind of go through there. Now, once you have it created, you can click on the retail side and you can link the accounts. So if I go ahead and link account, a new window is going to show up. And from here, I can link the golf and retail accounts together. So they would just log in when they're logging in for the first time. You want to log into the golf and then link the retail side. So then it's that one username that they're using. Super simple, super easy. It allows them to kind of go through and have that one experience through the whole system. It's also a really good idea to make sure your employees each have their own login. And as we go through the management, the retail inventory management, you're going to see why of what you're going to be able to see what they're doing in the system itself. So I'm just going to cancel out of here because I'm not going to create a new one. So now that we've gone through our settings, we're going to jump into our sales screen. Now I have my register already open. To show how to open and close a register, that will be covered in our staff operations webinar later this week, or there's also a recording in our help center. If you're looking at the screen, you can see my colorful buttons right in the middle. This really just allows you to customize the sales screen for your facility. Some buttons we will create for you, like rain check, if you're using our gift cards, whatever it is, you'll see some buttons already created there for you. Otherwise, you can create some custom ones. So right now I have the golf balls connected to my golf ball category, so I can go through here. I also have different ones where I have drop downs so that I can add specific items. I like having counter accessories as a button. It just makes things super easy. For our food and beverage, we can kind of keep going down. Just really allows you to customize what the screen is, make things as simple as possible for staff and be able to kind of go through there. Now, we'll go through more of the sales process in that staff operations webinar, but we're going to switch over to our settings because we're going to go ahead and create one of those buttons. So if I click on custom menu buttons, you can see I have a fair amount already created in here. But because I'm going to create one on our sale tab, I'm going to click there. You can see the list of ones I've already created down here. This one, I'm going to link it to our accessories category. I'm going to click category submenu because I'm linking it to a category. The color is really just the visual of the actual button itself, so I'll just make it a nice light pink. And I'll go ahead and click add menu to button. Button to menu, sorry. Now, if I scroll all the way at the bottom, you can see there's the order here. I can also customize it and just put it as a 2 if I want to make sure that it's appearing up at the top. So you can see here, I moved that button over here, but I'm going to go ahead and move this one back so that it's at the bottom. So once you create your buttons all here, just note you can move them around just to make sure that they're in an order that makes sense for the golf course and for your staff. Now, I know I already have an accessory ones up here, but I want to show you exactly what it would look like creating one. So once I've created it, now I need to link it to that category. So if I click on the none, I'm going to have my category menu appear. My list is not as clean as you want it to be, but I'm going to go ahead and just click accessories. So now it's linked to it. So now if I click on the button itself, you can see that it drops down. So right at the very bottom when you're creating your menu buttons, it'll actually give you a preview of what you just created. So it's a good way to make sure that it linked to the right thing. You can always make adjustments. If you click on accessories again, you can switch. Let's say I wanted it to that one. I can click there. Now when I click on accessories, you can see I have 2 new buttons. So if I click on belts, it'll show me items. Just gives you some flexibility in what you're looking at. Now, if you need any help with this, don't be afraid to reach out to our support team. They're very handy. If you click this button right here, it's going to get you either to our help center articles, or you can send a message over here. Really quick and easy ways to kind of navigate to there. Now, this was made possible because I've created my categories. So now in order to do that, we're going to shift over to our inventory. If I go ahead and click on inventory, this is really the bulk of where you're going to be able to manage your entire inventory list, whether it's through an import, adding items, being able to just kind of do any kind of purchase order or anything like that allows you to kind of go through there. Now I'm going to navigate at the bottom to our categories. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. You can see I have quite a few in here because I go ahead and use this quite often for demo purposes and for these webinars. But I'm going to go through here and you can see I already have our accessories one. Now, I have this duplicated one. I'm actually going to click on it and delete it because I don't need it. I already have my accessories built in. But in order to create a brand new one, I'm going to go ahead and click new category. I'll just give it a name. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and make a hard goods item. From here, I can now create some different subcategories. You can be super broad in golf clubs, or if you wanted to, you could just put irons, you could put putters, you could put putters. You can really kind of pick and choose what you're looking for. I deleted my category name, so I can go back in there and put hard goods. Now that I'm all finished, I'll add my subcategory. Hit save changes, and now if I go back, I'll scroll down to my hard goods and you can see that I have those subcategories created. Now when you're looking at your reports, it will take your category and break it down by subcategory, but if you have any kind of chart of accounts, GLs, anything that you want to make sure that you're keeping your inventory and your reporting super clean, you really want to create those parent categories as your GL. So if you have one for merchandise, you probably want to just create a merchandise category so that your reports are nice and clean, simple, and everything. No shortage of categories that we can create. And also, if you've opted to have your inventory imported, these categories will be created automatically for you through your import. So it's a good idea to kind of consider your inventory list that you've sent over for import and what it's going to look like when you're navigating through it. So it's a good way to kind of manage your inventory. So now that we have our categories, we have everything we want, now we can go in and actually create a new item. So I'm going to go ahead and click new item. From here, the description is what's going to appear on the actual receipt itself and how you're going to be able to also search the item. So from here, I'll just go ahead and create a hoodie. I'm going to create just a single type. The type impacts some different options. We're going to come back to this, don't worry. I can put in how many I've received from the outset. My system ID is going to be generated automatically, but you do have the option of adding any kind of SKU. If you're using a barcode scanner, it's a good idea to just kind of use the same format that it's configured for. You can always change the configuration of it, but for simplicity, just keep the same barcode format that you were using previously. Just makes things easier. If you don't know what kind of SKU you can always use the manufacturer one since it comes on the barcode that is sent to you. Now this is where you really want to make sure you're filling it out. So this category, just like we created before, so it's a hoodie. So we're going to go under apparel, It's going to be a women's apparel. We can put it under shirts if we want to. We can put the brand. We're missing that Lightspeed one, so I can go ahead and create it and click add to my brands. You can add tags, which will impact just your filters on your reporting. And then from here, I can put the pricing levels. Now you can dictate, if you use price levels for anything, just bring it up to your implementation consultant. They will be able to walk you through it and build it with you and your facility in mind. You can decide whether or not the item itself can be discounted, taxable, and also you can choose the tax class to make sure it's at this right one. So you can see I have quite a few created over here. And then down here, I can go ahead and put our default cost and what our vendor is. We can scroll through and see if we have our Lightspeed one. We don't. So I'll go ahead and create it. Add, and now it's added into my list. Super easy, super good. If you use purchase orders, this is a good thing to fill out just to make your ordering process that much simpler. If you do use purchase orders, just bring it up to your implementation consultant. They will go through it with you individually. A lot of people order items slightly differently, so we like to kind of tailor it to the golf course itself. So just bring it up and they'll cover it with you in your setup finalization meeting so that we can kind of go through that list one more time. So now that I've finished, I put everything I want to put on here. I'll go ahead and hit save changes. And from there, it'll bring me to my item view. So this is where you're going to kind of see in your inventory list, you'll be able to see the history of it. You'll be able to see the sales, the inventory, all of it. In here, you can see the sale value, the cost on hand. It's a really good way to kind of see it. Also, any kind of history, any changes. You can see I manually added that item in. I'm logged in as this employee, so you can kind of go through there. Now, if I go back to our inventory, we're going to go ahead and add a new one. This time we're going to add some golf balls. So I'm going to do ball dozen. I'm going to change the type to a boxed item. I'm going to add those 10 boxes. So I have 10 dozens on hand. I could put a custom SKU if I want to. For category, we're going to want to put, I have a golf ball category. It's not Titleist, so I'll just leave it there. Now, we did already add our Lightspeed one, so I can easily add there. And for our default cost, we're going to say that the dozens is 60. We're going to go merchandise, and our cost on there is pretty high, so we're going to do 35. Perfect. And then to finish off, I'm just going to put our vendor. Now, you're not forced to put this information in there, but again, the more effort you put into your inventory from the outset, just the more reporting you're going to be able to get out of it. So that should always be your focus as you're building your inventory, is just what reporting am I going to be able to access. We're going to cover some reporting in just a little bit, so we'll be able to show you what it looks like. So now, when I go ahead and hit save changes, you're going to notice I now have this box option on the left-hand panel. So if I go ahead and click box, from here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to link this to a single. Golf balls are sold generally in two formats, a dozen and a sleeve. The system can actually link those together. So if you're selling a sleeve and you need to open up a dozen, the system can actually recognize that you're doing that. So you can either search your existing items, just find your single item, or you can create a brand new one from this screen. So this isn't a dozen, this is now a sleeve. There are 4 sleeves in my dozen, and I can go ahead and create single. From there, you can see my price took that $60 and divided it by 4, as well as my cost. Now, again, blue, so I can click on it, so I can go there. I can also change the price. If you do sell it at a different markup than your dozen, you can dictate that your sleeve is sold at a different one. If I click on inventory, we're going to see that I have 0 in stock. So I'm going to hit save changes. I'm going to quickly go to our sales screen. I'm going to search my Lightspeed sleeve. You can see it popped up right away over here. I have a pretty low cost on, I have a pretty low one. So I can go ahead and here, I'm just going to quickly finish this sale. Now, if I go to our inventory list, I'm going to search our Lightspeed golf ball. The system opened that one of those dozens and says, hey, I took one out to sell it to a customer. I now have 3 individual sleeves I can sell, so let me put it with our sleeve item, and I'm going to keep the 9 dozens that I haven't opened yet as dozens. So it's constantly pulling the inventory list from there. When you're ordering it as dozens. When you're opening them up, it's as dozens. So this allows you to kind of track how you're selling each item while being able to make sure that the inventory levels are right, especially if you're going to do your inventory counts. At this point, you would have 3 individual sleeves and 9 dozens. So this way it allows you to kind of go through there. It's a pretty unique thing to the golf industry of where we definitely have this item that we're very much selling in 2 different formats most of the time. So this allows you to kind of connect them together and allow them to pull their inventory off each other. So it's a good way to go through there. Now, when you're looking at your inventory, I can click through here and look at my inventory list. You can see I'm at 9. You can manually add it. It's not, we don't advise it. We think if you're going to make any adjustments to the inventory, it's always best to kind of go through either an inventory count or something like that, just so that there's the historical and stuff. Anything you do manually, it will still appear on your log in your history report of your inventory. But if you're going to make a big mass change to anything, you're going to want to do an inventory count. So this will just allow you to make those counts that much quicker and just be able to update and reconcile and do your shrinkage. If you do inventory counts often on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, at the end of the season, beginning of the season, bring this up with your implementation consultant so that they can walk you through the process and make sure that you have a really good handle on it, because that's something that you really want to make sure you're comfortable and confident in as you navigate through there. So when we're looking at our inventory list over here, we're going to see we have quite a few down here. Yeah, perfect. So if I look at our golf items, we can see that everything's at $0 and we have this dash next to it. These are non-inventory items. So they're items that we don't necessarily keep track of the stock levels on, but we do sell them quite often. You can see over here for our 18-hole public, we have this $10 price tag. You don't have to put any prices. Don't worry that it looks at $0. That is how it should look. Your prices are going to come from your price sheets from the golf side. So that's where you want to focus your attention, and you want to make sure that everything is in there so that you're navigating all your pricing for your golf items, whether it's green fees, carts, packages, memberships, everything's being dictated on the golf side. So don't worry about this. You want these there. You want these looking like this. You can always adjust the categories that they're assigned to. They're just these automated items that get created as you create them on the golf side. So that is exactly how they should look. Now, one of the last things we're going to cover today is a little bit of our reports. So as you can see, there's no shortage of reports that you can see on the retail side. Not all your employees are probably going to have access to these reports. You can give them access if you choose, if you want, like I was saying, if you wanted to elevate the permissions of a specific employee, you can. Otherwise, this is what they'll look like. The benefit is that you do have this short description of what each report actually entails and what it's covering. So it's a good way to kind of see what is in there. If we navigate to our totals report, we can see those sales that we created today. We can see the customer. If I click on here, I can go to the specific transaction. I can print the receipt. I can get a gift receipt. I'll do that flexibility. Otherwise, you can always filter to a specific date range. So if you want to see the whole month of November, you can see your totals. At the very bottom, it's going to show you any discounts, your margins, all that on your items. Some other key reports that we like going through is our item report. So if we go down here, we can see we sold 1 golf ball sleeve, we sold a membership payment, we had 2 packages that we sold. So it just gives you a really good breakdown of the items itself. Again, if you wanted to filter on a specific date range, it allows you to do that. You can also go to a specific item, or if you want to see just a specific category. So quick actionable things that you can kind of take a look at. And then in the same vein, we can go down here and click on category. And just like we did before, we have our golf balls sold because that's where we categorize it. But you can see here actually those sales we previously made had no category. If I click on this eye icon, I'm going to be able to see the details of those items. So I want to make the adjustment right away, so I can go ahead and click on the item. I can click on golf. I'm going to say this was a package, save changes. Now if I click back into that report, it automatically updates. So the second you make an adjustment to any of your items and their categories, it will impact your reporting. So you will be able to see exactly what impact it has on your reports and what it looks like. So it's a really good way to kind of see the history on that. The other thing is your current inventory. So if you click on your assets, you'll be able to see the exact value of your. You can see we have quite a few items in this account. We use it quite a bit, but it allows you to see exactly how many items are in your pro shop. It's a good way to kind of get an idea of what it looks like. But I think you should navigate through these. There's a ton of reports. There's so much information available to you. It's just a matter of looking and finding the ones that work for you and your golf course. As you go through your onboarding, we always advise everyone to make sure that you're practicing, practice, go through everything and look at your reports after. This is the time where we can make adjustments, we can change things up, make sure that everything as you get ready to roll out with the system is going to work for you. So we always encourage everyone to do that. Now we've gone through our agenda. We've covered our online booking settings. We've gone through our customers and our employee management. We sold some memberships and packages and services. We went through some basic inventory management tools, and we covered some key reports. So now that we've covered that, what's next? Don't forget to finish configuring your T-sheet. You want to make sure your memberships and player types and everything is built out as quick as possible so you can start practicing, as well as your pro shop. So make sure you get that inventory list either in manually or send it over for import. Next up, you'll be attending your setup finalization. This is just to make sure that any configuration you've done is how you want it to be, that it is going to work for you, allows the implementation consultant to kind of get that final check. Now, you will want to keep an eye out for an email with resources. It will give you some links to the Help Center articles covering everything I spoke about today, as well as a recording of this webinar. So it's super important to kind of tackle that. You really want to make sure you're going through that. Bookmark our Help Center. It's really going to make sure that you have everything you need as you get started with Lightspeed. So thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure speaking to everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will stay on and answer any of them for you. If not, thank you so much for your time, and we'll make sure that you have a great system configuration and that your setup finalization training goes smoothly. So don't forget, we have that onboarding checklist that you would have been sent. We have the webinar recording. Sign up for our staff webinar. That should be later this week, or you can also find the recording elsewhere if the times don't work for you, depending on your time zone. And please don't forget our Help Center. It's full of super useful resources, super handy articles as you get ready. It will go through everything that gets covered in your training. So don't forget to bookmark that in your browser for your staff and for yourself. So thanks again. And if there's anything else you need, please let us know. But have a good rest of your day, and we will talk soon.